I'm the Philosophical Bachelor, and today we will continue on our metaphysical investigations with Chapter 5 on Humanity. With the emergence of human consciousness and human spirit, we have been motivated to form groups and later communities, societies, states, and global communities. An early reason to do so is to enhance self-preservation. Coming together with other people multiplies the strength of individuals, allowing them to carry out tasks impossible for just one person. Equity, fairness, and justice are issues that only arise when more than one person is involved. They do not apply for a lone individual, as there is no basis of comparison in the case of equity and fairness, and no avenue for recourse other than himself, which is no avenue at all, since it is his helplessness that desires the remedies of justice to begin with. Nonetheless, human beings have not lived alone since they arrived on the scene. The species would have perished if some among them did not minimally have a mate and then children. Additionally, children are unable to take care of themselves in their early years, requiring the care of others lest they perish. That being the case, the family emerged as a basic unit of society second only to the individual. In any case, people not from the same family found one another and came to live together. Language allowed for communication, and the communication of ideas allowed people to learn from one another. Schools formalized the teaching of the young. Religions flourished, helping people bear the suffering inflicted by forces which they did not understand, such as natural catastrophes and harsh weather. Marketplaces developed for people to gather in order to trade. Tools were invented to lighten the work of gathering food, hunting, fishing, and later farming. But as Thomas Hobbes and John Locke warned, living with others creates a potential for conflict, leading to a need for protection from one another. Hence, law emerged. Justice prevented crimes and created conditions amenable for cooperation and exchange. Authorities are then needed to execute justice, but then protection from them is needed against their potential abuse of power. As populations grew, political structures developed, with checks and balances. Life as an individual, in a family, a small village, a town, a city, and a country, all provided differing benefits, disadvantages, and make differing demands on its members. Different institutions at the various levels of governance were developed to meet the people's needs. They were not all successful from the start. We needed to learn as individuals, but also as communities, what was needed to make a society function well, and it took millennia of wars, struggle, slavery, colonization, oppression, and then liberation to figure it out. We are still figuring it out. Alongside, and to some extent because of the suffering, we developed the arts, philosophy, the humanities, culture, music, literature, mathematics, science, technology, craft, manners, politics, fashion, finance, and industry. As conditions changed, we also needed to change ourselves, but also how our societies are ordered. The processes shifted from the biological towards the dialectical, where initial ways of doing things gave way to different ways, which are not necessarily better. However, with our capacity to learn and change, yet newer ways arose, incorporating the lessons we had learned from previous ways, while bringing along new challenges that need to be overcome, in turn requiring new ways which bring yet new difficulties. As improvements become normalized, people's expectations also rise. Competition and the profit motive may in some cases accelerate refinements, but may also subvert the original intentions. We see this Hegelian sublation in our political, education, judicial, and economic systems. Philosophical, scientific, mathematical, and technical knowledge, and technologies. The dialectical process continues unabated, with each individual in each new generation having to try to understand the world they have been thrown into and find their way in it. Many proceed along well-trodden paths, while some create new paths, opening the way for others to follow. However, outcomes for the new often are at the onset ambiguous. Some turn out to be beneficial, some harmful, but we often can only know which is which in hindsight. This leads us to our 14th principle. The path of knowledge is dialectical. The price of life is death. Self-preservation and reproduction are basic instincts among all living things simply because those without these instincts would have perished, many before reproducing, hence causing this lack of self-preserving instinct to gradually be eliminated from the gene pool. Nonetheless, even the most tenacious of living things, and the fortunate few which do not suffer lack of predation, will still ultimately die, because the body's innate capability for repair and maintenance as it ages also declines, leading to physical deterioration, and finally, death. Most, however, will perish from sickness, violence, or accident. Death comes for all living things, but for human beings, if not other conscious beings also, death takes on a haunting dread. What is the point of being conscious, intelligent, self-conscious, and inspirited if it is going to come to an end after an all too brief interlude of life? This question has troubled humankind probably since they had the capacity to realize that life terminates. This knowledge infects life, making life ultimately a deadly disease and to some extent sucking the joy out of our existences. Martin Heidegger teaches that death is an essential part of what gives meaning to our lives. By being beings in the world, we are then also beings towards death. We should hence confront this unavoidable fact and embrace it in order to live authentically. Without death, there will be no reason to do anything in the now, since there is always tomorrow. The flavor of life will then be bland, while the threat of death is the spur in our sides that motivates us to seize the day while it lasts. Memento mori, remember you will die. Not all share this view. Epicurus is agnostic. He writes, "Death, the most terrifying of ills, is nothing to us, since so long as we exist, death is not with us, but when death comes, then we do not exist. It does not then concern either the living or the dead, since for the former it is not, and the latter are no more." According to him, it is not death itself that brings suffering, but its anticipation. It is not about living the longest, but living pleasurably while it lasts. A pessimistic take comes from Silenus, a mythical figure known for his wisdom who told King Midas, "What is best of all is utterly beyond your reach, not to be born, not to be nothing. But the second best for you is to die soon." Yet for many others, death does not mean the end of life, since there will be a life after this life. Some among them believe we will face divine judgment which will confer on us eternal bliss or damnation. Others talk about how, depending on the conduct of one's present and past lives, we will reincarnate according to this accumulated karma, stuck on an endless wheel of suffering, since all life is suffering. However, they also tell of a way to get off this wheel through realizing the truth of existence and in that way becoming enlightened. At the heart of these various views is a perennial question of philosophy. What is the good life? Even the best among us cannot escape death, and yet, as Heidegger puts it, given that we are the kind of being for which being itself is a problem, we cannot help but think that there must be something more than this temporary existence. The existential quest for meaning vexes us, and yet, can there truly be any meaning worth having if life sooner or later ends? We hence plumb the depths of our spirit in our quest for meaning, desperate to connect to some eternal and transcendental truth. If it does not exist, we may necessarily have to invent it. The dialectical leads us to the spiritual. This brings us to our 15th principle. Seeking meaning is a spiritual quest. Randomness took billions of years to throw up even the most rudimentary forms of life, after which it took several billions more before the universe had conscious beings. Variations led to speciation with its balance between instinct and intellect. Human beings depended more on their intellects, but to go further, they had to go with others. Sociality brought humankind further onto the dialectical path of civilization, but for all our cultural and technological advancements, the same sense of wonder since the first human being looked towards the sky and pondered why continues to trouble and fascinate at least the contemplative among us. That first why was like the cry of a newborn baby, but what was born was the human spirit. This emergence of the human spirit brought spirit per se for the first time onto the scene of what was previously a spiritless universe. As the question why echoed down the generations, some turned away, thinking they are defiant in replying why not, but we have never been satisfied with that. The spirit in its freedom refuses to simply accept that things are the way they are, because that is not the way of the free thinking. Even if a mute acceptance is the final answer, we each must try to find that answer out for ourselves, because our individual spirit is always trying to go beyond itself and its bodily conditions. The spirit that persists is a spirit that refuses to mindlessly submit. A spirit that recognizes the spirit of others is elevated, while a spirit that denies spirit becomes lost, trying to become merely a thing, caught up in material pursuits in the thought that that is meaning, when that is merely the surface of appearances. To want more is the overarching drive of both types, but what that more is not the same. Not all spirits are ready in their current states for enlightenment. Whatever the case is, each life contributes to the state of affairs in the universe. A few will become great spiritual leaders, religious or otherwise, who will lead many closer to salvation. A few will be great villains, leaving the world substantially worse off, sparking off generations of harm and suffering. Most will be neither, belonging to the masses, each trying to pursue his happiness as far as he can to the extent that he understands it. As individuals, their impact on the world will be vanishingly little, but as a collective, their impact may match or exceed that of the great teachers and villains. In that way, karma is real, whether or not there is reincarnation. In any case, a reincarnated living being does not recall her previous lives, making it for all effective purposes a new life. This is not a defect, but a necessary feature to give that person a fresh chance to lead a good life, free from the encumbrances and prejudices she may have had previously, though she also necessarily loses what she had learned from prior existences. She will, however, benefit from or suffer the collective effects of the acts of those who lived before and contemporaneously with her, including her previous selves. The collective effects of humanity, such as the state of its culture, science, history, philosophy, social norms, and environment, reverberate in the current and future world, for better or for worse. Some individuals will also inherit intergenerational wealth, debt, or trauma from their forebears. Just as we have reaped what we did not sow, so shall the people of the future. Whatever damage, harm, goodness, and love done by previous generations are inherited by subsequent generations. In that way, the world as a whole advances or deteriorates. If a person does not reincarnate, should she nonetheless care? It seems that she should, because even if she does not personally reap the fruits of her karma, her offspring and their offspring will, and hence it still remains a matter of self-interest to act for the betterment of the world. But it's not goodness simply to do the good thing because it is good to do, even if one has no skin in the game. How does one go from a love of self, of kith and kin, of one's community, one's society, and one's countrymen, to a love for all mankind, given that one will never be acquainted with most of humanity? Without the threat of heaven, hell, or karmic reincarnation, can we still do the right thing, to act in ways that will benefit or at least not harm others? If we need threats or utility to act morally, is that really moral anyway? Is it not the mark of an enlightened spirit to act morally and do what is good simply because it is good to do, without the allurement of reward or the fear of punishment? Chapter 6. Cosmic Spirit. We have many examples of saints and heroes to show us the way to enlightenment. An integral part of living the good life is to be responsible for ourselves, the beings and things around us, and our environment. We nourish our spirit, the spirits of others, and in that way also the human spirit as a whole. Human beings have developed agency by which we are able to reduce randomness in our world through active intentionality. Through the use of our dialectical intellect, love, and compassion, we can figure out what is the good thing to do, not just for ourselves but for all. Through the use of our agency and physical abilities, we can garner the means to put it into action. We have begun, if not be reasonably advanced, towards the development of human spirit, with communication, media, and transportation technologies linking humanity closer than ever before. Global associations such as the United Nations connect national representatives, and while consensus is not always achieved, the channels for multilateral negotiations are at least in place. These global associations are, however, still organized along national lines. We must ultimately go beyond national interests to the interests of humankind, our world at large, and then the universe. Because of our abilities, we have a disproportionately large impact on the world, both on its non-living and living things. We have begun to understand that we have to take care of nature if nature is going to be able to continue to provide for us. Because of our outsized impact, our intellectual ability to recognize it, and the agency to do something about it, we have to take responsibility for the world and in that way achieve a world spirit. As a collective, we can and have to some extent advanced from individual spirits to develop community spirits, social spirits, national spirits, a human spirit, and a world spirit. The individual, community, society, nation, humanity, and world reciprocally develop one another. Each can drag the other down or elevate each other. Let us consider the concrete relations between a society and its people. An individual person can contribute to or damage his society by his acts. Conversely, a society can contribute to or damage its individuals. We can only speak of society having a spirit when there is a voluntary and not reluctant or coerced unity among its members. It need not be a unanimous and totalizing unity, but its members should have a sense of belonging to the wider collective and a mutuality of care, respect, and love for one another. In the ideal case, even its malcontents' rebellion and their desire for change and reform are driven by love and not out of malice and hate, because they envision and desire a better society. The members will have a collective ownership of their society and not be owned by it, for that is dysfunctional and destructive of spirit, the spirit of its members, and by extension the society's own spirit. This brings us to our 16th principle. Elevation, not debasement, is what fosters spirit. The universe has passed through stages of randomness, life, consciousness, dialectical reasoning, human agency, and has now arrived at the stage of spirit. Through the emergence of human spirit, spirit has entered the universe as a newborn. By fostering the development of our individual and collective spirit, spirit is developing through the work of individual spirits, community spirits, social spirits, national spirits, human spirit, and world spirits, to form a universal or cosmic spirit. We should note that these stages of spirit are not prescriptive. It may be possible to go from individual spirits to human spirit and then world spirit, for instance, where each person realizes that they are members of humanity and the world, without the intermediate stages of communities, societies, or nations. Nonetheless, human history has seen the formation of communities, societies, nations, and global associations. It may sound hyperbolic and premature to dream of a spirit beyond world spirit, of a universal or cosmic spirit, since we have not yet managed to discover life elsewhere in the universe. For now, we have not travelled significantly even within our galaxy, but as we increasingly extend our reach beyond the boundaries of our planet, we are sending life into the universe. But in any case, the voyage of spirit is not a physical one. How will the last stage of cosmic spirit be born? This essay up to now is already extremely speculative, but at least talks about matters that have come to pass, attempting to give a rational, naturalistic, and somewhat coherent narrative linking the various stages of the development of the universe. To render an account of the last stage would necessarily be even more speculative, but there have in fact already been many attempts by thinkers since antiquity. They are variations on several themes. 1. Creator gods or gods according to theistic religions. 2. The transcendent one of Neoplatonism, whose perfection overflows leading to the formation of descending less perfect realms. 3. The mysterious Tao which gives birth to one, the one to two, the two to three, and the three to all things. And 4. Pantheism, such as the Absolute of F. H. Bradley and the Deus Sive Natura of Spinoza. The first three consider the cosmic spirit or their equivalent to be primordial, the first stage and not the last stage. Pantheism can have a more developmental nature. Bradley does not address the concept of spirit, but analytically demonstrates that the level of the total must be the true reality because it encompasses all. Spinoza's ethics is concerned with spirit or God, but considers it as all of nature and hence the totality of everything spatially and temporally. In addition, mystics over the ages tell of their direct experiences of union with the cosmic spirit through their living of the spiritual life. In my discussion, I have posited the cosmic spirit not as primordial, from which all things are created or emerge, but as a final stage after a gradual ascent from individual spirit to world spirit. What then are the mystics connecting to if the cosmic spirit is not yet born or is in its infancy? Is the individual spirit's desire for the transcendent a part of the organizing principle bringing about the emergence of the cosmic spirit? My speculation is that as we delve into this mystery, we realize that we are part of a whole. By realize, I do not mean merely having a thought or a belief, but a profoundly transformative and lasting enlightenment. This whole of which we are a part of encompasses everything. It is the universe. It is not just the universe at this particular moment in time, but across all time, past, present, and future. Because it contains everything, the Absolute is sufficient and complete. Following Bradley's reasoning, there are no contradictions at the level of the Absolute, because one way or another, all oppositions are resolved. There is no good nor bad, there is only the whole. As Taoism's concept of the yin-yang teaches, dark and light cannot exist without the other. The good that accrues to one to the detriment of another and the harm that accrues to one to the benefit of another is felt at the level of the individual, but at the level of the whole, it is all the same, whichever way the chips fall. There is a union of all things across time and space. We are all connected, each a part contributing to the grand tapestry of the whole. The difficulty in such a doctrine is that the unjust may then take advantage or even be excused for their bad behavior, while the just may not be commended for their good acts, which may then seem like a repudiation. But precisely to try to gain advantage, to desire recognition, is to place the principium indivisionis, the principle of individuation, as the overriding principle of existence. The principium individualis is Maya, an illusion, since reality is only in the whole, the Absolute. It is, however, hard to put aside our grasping. Self-preservation is deeply embedded in our biology. Abraham Maslow describes a hierarchy of needs, where basic needs must first be satisfied before higher order needs and wants can be pursued. He writes, "The urge to write poetry, the desire to acquire an automobile, the interest in American history, the desire for a new pair of shoes are, in the extreme case, forgotten or become of secondary importance. For the man who is extremely and dangerously hungry, no other interest exists but food. We first have to survive before we can obtain higher order goods. However, that does not mean that there is no other worthwhile human activity other than the pursuit of self-preservation and by extension, self-interest. The converse also holds in Maslow's statement. After one's hunger is satisfied, there is then the capacity for further goods culminating in self-actualization, to create art, to acquire non-essential but desirable material goods, or to pursue the humanities. We turn to material pursuits beyond food and shelter, but also intellectual and spiritual pursuits, because we are not merely animals, but intellectual and spiritual beings. It is part of our nature to be social. Because we seek community with others, we also desire to contribute to and elevate them, and in that way elevate us all. To develop our spirit, we need to turn away from and reduce our non-spiritual appetites. We want to connect with the Absolute and can only do so through our spirits. But how can we if we do not put aside our material side? Scheller's insight is our spirit does not possess its own energy. To foster it, we need to take the energy from our drives, redirecting the energy that would usually go to satisfying our bodily appetites towards the development of our spirit. It is because in each of our individualities, we are a unified person. We cannot be at the same time depraved and spiritual, or grasping and contented. We are unified in our individual persons, but we are also unified with the totality simply by being an inescapable part of the total. However, whether we realize that we are part of a greater whole is a different matter. The cells or organs of our body may not realize that they are part of our body, but their inability to realize this does not make them any less a part of the whole. Likewise, whether we realize we are a part of the universe, we nonetheless are. However, by realizing our role as spirited agents who have a disproportionate influence on our world, this world being a part of the wider universe, we are able to contribute more deliberately rather than incidentally to the development of the cosmic spirit. By developing ourselves and our immediate community, then our wider community, and finally recognizing that all these are merely part of an even larger whole, the largest whole being the universe, we are extending ourselves, our society, and our world towards the cosmic spirit. This brings us to our 17th principle. Our individual spirits are the basis by which the cosmic spirit is wrought. There are two aspects of this contribution of the individual, be it positive or negative. The first is incidental, similar to Smith's invisible hand on the economic contributions of each individual in pursuit only of their self-interest, that pleasingly results in an efficient market system. Simply by each person's effort in developing his own spirit is developed. The second is deliberate, where he transcends his own spirit in order to develop the spirit of the collective. By going beyond his personal self-interest to consider the interests of the collective, armed with the understanding that the collective is more important than the self, he is thus willing to sacrifice his personal gain, at least to some extent, if he can benefit the collective to a greater extent. It is not that his individual spirit has to be completely submerged, since his personal spiritual development also contributes to the development of the collective spirit. However, he is aware that there is a higher calling of a greater, more encompassing spirit that requires his involvement also. It is a virtuous cycle where as each stage of spirit progresses in its development, it becomes more cognizant of the big picture and the importance of developing the next and subsequent stages of spirit, culminating in the cosmic spirit. If it is able to translate this realization into concrete action, this is its enlightenment. Likewise, the communities which constitute the nation may pursue their own spiritual development, but also go beyond its own community's spirit to foster the development of the national spirit. In the same way, the national spirit shall give way to the human spirit to world spirit, and the world spirit to cosmic spirit, each stage furthering its own spirit, but also transcending it for the sake of the subsequent stages. This brings us to our 18th and final principle. Each stage of spirit's development and transcendence develops the subsequent stages of spirit, ultimately fostering the development of cosmic spirit. To conclude, let us bring together the principles that have been derived through these metaphysical investigations. From nothing can come something because of randomness, out of which order can emerge. Fields are the basis of reality, making the organization of processes the cause of properties. By organizing processes differently, new properties may emerge. Because the universe is infinite spatially and temporally, if something is possible, it will happen sooner or later somewhere in the universe. Life is one such possibility emerging from the complex ordering of the processes of the inanimate. As the universe develops, emergent forces may play a more significant role than the older forces, although the older forces remain active. Randomness gives way to mechanical forces, which gives way to biological forces. Life is tied to consciousness, of which there are degrees of consciousness in the balance between instinct and intellect. The emergence of life and consciousness gives rise to sensation, leading to the formation of values. Multiple values lead to a need to prioritize competing values. Having choices, the ability to reason, and the agency to act on our freely willed choice lead us to question the meaning of our personal existence. This quest for meaning is informed by knowledge, which path is dialectical. The quest for meaning is a spiritual quest, leading to a transcendence by human beings of their physical drives, which gives birth to and nourishes spirit. Our individual spirits are the basis by which the cosmic spirit is wrought. Elevation, not debasement, fosters spirit. Through the development and subsequent transcendence of our individual spirit, we foster the growth of the collective spirit towards the cosmic spirit. That brings us to the end of my metaphysical investigations, and thank you for listening to the Philosophical Bachelor.